Our first speaker is Adele Tracy. Adele is a talented Team GB athlete, and she is a British Dyslexia Association ambassador. So Adele has represented Great Britain at different age levels for more than a decade, and finished fourth in the 800 metres at the 2018 European Championships, and is a past British 800 metre indoor champion as well. She's a talented girl from school age, she's a talented school athlete, and she was mentored by Dame Kelly Holmes, who chose her alongside 6 others rising sports stars to light the Olympic London flame in 2012. So we are very privileged to have Adele here to talk about her experiences. Adele, are you there?
I am, yes. Hello, everyone.
Morning.
Morning. Yeah, thank you so much for that introduction, Lynn, and thank you for everyone who's joining today. So I'm so excited to be here and sort of just speak really briefly about my experiences with dyscalculia. And obviously becoming an athlete is, I feel, no accident. There's a lot of sort of creative sports people who I think have these neurodiversities within sport, and the main reason I became an athlete, I think, is because I really lent into my strengths at school, and it's just been something that I've always enjoyed, and I've really enjoyed and thrived in that area of sport. But in terms of dyscalculia, that kind of does come into like my everyday, still as an adult. You know, obviously I work in an area where there's a lot of numbers, distances, times. And for me, I think the biggest thing is processing all that information. I'm really lucky that I have a great team around me that understand my challenges, and my coach in particular is really great at sort of breaking things down for me and allowing me to make him understand what makes things easier for me to process. But I'd say the biggest kind of components of my dyscalculia are sort of time management, processing, feeling overwhelmed, because I think when you see a lot of numbers in front of you, sometimes for me, they move around a lot, and that can just be a lot. So like tens, hundreds, thousands, that's still a massive difficulty for me. I know I've made a few errors withdrawing cash from machines before. Luckily, we don't use too much cash nowadays. But when it comes to sort of even reading the time, for me, you know, I'm always wearing a digital clock, luckily, but that's still, you know, something that I really struggle with. And, you know, my training sessions, having them down on paper, it's a lot easier for me to kind of work that through practically than it is to sort of read that. So my coach is really great at saying, you know what, this is a 600 rep, we're just going to do a lap and a half of the track. So I think that's where I've found it really useful to sort of overcome my challenges, is just by taking time, giving myself time to sort of understand what helps me. And I would say adding a practical element is really helpful for me. I can remember when I was a child, my mum would help me through. She's also dyscalculic, so homework was a massive challenge. But you know, if we were doing, say, fractions or percentages or things like that, you know, she might say, cut this apple into, you know, 3/4 or whatever, or give me the change to go to the local shop so that I could physically work out how much money I need to pay with the change. Things like that I think are really helpful, because it just puts that mathematic or those numbers into context. I can remember sort of doing my times tables on the way to school in the car, and we would sing them on a CD, and then when I was in an exam, I could, you know, go back to that moment and think of that song of the times tables and recite them in that way. So just things like that I think are really helpful, in particular if you're new to numbers and things. But I guess the things that help me now as an adult through every day are just writing down sort of schedules. I have a schedule for every working day that I do, and that just helps me make sure that my time management's there, and I'm almost over-organized to overcompensate for those that time to process everything. For race day, that's a massive thing for me, so I quite often have a call time before I get onto the track, and that might be 20 to 30 minutes before my race. So working out what time I have to be on the track, and it's always an awkward number, something like, 6:57 or something. It won't be ever a rounded number. And I have to work out 20 minutes before what time I'd be on the track, what time I need to have my numbers and my bibs on my chest, what time I need to warm up, fuel, hydrate, all of those little things. So I will literally do a schedule from the moment I wake up to the moment I'm on that track. So I think that's really helped me. And even with my working life, I also work as a makeup artist. So where I work with clients, I do a schedule of the morning for a wedding or, for a photo shoot or whatever. So that's been really helpful. I'd say the biggest thing for me would probably be just being, unapologetically dyscalculic. I think if you are honest with people, I found that they can be really willing to help and really willing to understand. So if I explain and, just say, this might take me a little bit more time, can you just give me a moment? It just allows you to have that time. I know from where I've had extra time in exams or been in a classroom situation, and I might have that extra time, but actually everyone else around me is working at a different speed, and just having that sense of pressure sometimes can just make you panic a little bit, especially when it comes to numbers, which I find super overwhelming anyway. So actually going one-on-one with someone, or just going, on my own. I've definitely noticed when I was at university, if I was in a room with, other people who were getting extra time, I felt that a lot more calming, because there was just a handful of us rather than a whole pool of people. So I would say even now, I just give myself that time and I just say to people, this is a challenge for me. I might just need a little bit longer. And I think that makes a huge amount of difference. So yeah, they're really simple things, but I think that's just basically, negating life. It's something that's always with you, but if you can find ways of managing everyday tasks and just making life a little bit more simple, then it really does make a huge difference. So yeah.
Lovely. I've promised myself that I will not do that thing where I'm on mute and try to speak. So I'm going to do it all day. Thank you, Adele. We're going to open up to questions. So if anybody would like to pop anything in the chat, or if you'd like to put your hand up and ask directly, please do so. I'll give you a minute or two just to do that. But I was just wondering, Adele, if you had advice for educators about, because you're clearly a very confident person about your dyscalculia and advocate very well for yourself. If you were going to give people advice, like teachers, what would you say to them to support young people who have these difficulties?
I think to just get them to understand that actually there are so many strengths that come with dyscalculia, and just having that challenge and isn't necessarily a barrier to success. I think if you can get young people to realize that is really key for confidence. I know as a child I was really introverted and shy because I was so aware of these situations where I did feel really vulnerable and actually quite anxious, but that kind of those strengths that I sort of lent into, like sports, gave me that realization, oh no, I am actually really good at some things. And I think if you can encourage other sort of things outside of the challenging areas and get that confidence there, it is really helpful. Yeah.
Lovely. So it's about celebrating strengths.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. We did have Caroline McIntyre with her hand up. Caroline, did you still want to ask a question?
Yeah, my question was going to be, I work with dyslexic kids, but sometimes getting them to write their tables out in 100 square in exam position, would that be useful, or was that a waste of your valuable time?
So when you say get them to write out their times tables,
yeah, in 100 type, like multiplication grid.
Yeah,
to take off some pressure.
Yeah, maybe. I think the thing is, I think every single dyscalculic and dyslexic is different. So I think sometimes it is just that individual approach and just seeing, you know, what makes them thrive, what makes them tick. For me, grids and lines and anything that's going to distract me feels quite overwhelming. So actually I prefer, so even when I do my tax return, for example, I don't do it in something like Excel, because I find that actually a lot more confusing. You know, I just have a simple app and I keep everything separate and clear. So lines for me actually, and numbers can be quite distracting. I actually recently missed a flight because I think your eyes can very quickly jump up to the line above sort of thing, and I read the wrong flight number or something like that. So that's just an example. So yeah, I just think maybe just finding out what works for those individuals, and asking them. Sometimes a colour or a ruler or something like that can be helpful.
Thank you.
We've got a few questions in the chat. Someone's asking, when were you diagnosed and what was the process of that like?
So I was diagnosed with dyscalculia when I was 14, but I was actually diagnosed as dyslexic when I was, I think, 8 years old. So I was really lucky to have a specialist teaching assessor at my school. And my mum had sort of picked up on a lot of different things. So we went through the process of getting me diagnosed at 8 years old. So it's quite young. And actually, I think that was a really useful thing for me, because a lot of the time when I was in the classroom, I was just like, what on earth? I don't understand why I almost can't keep up with everybody else. So that just gave me the understanding. And actually it was so helpful, because I think once you understand, then it makes it a lot easier to negate certain situations and also have that support in place. So I've actually found that the way that I sort of get around my dyslexia has been a lot easier. And I don't know if that's because I had an earlier diagnosis. I find the things that impact my everyday more are the numerical things. And I don't know if that's just because I was slightly older when I was diagnosed, but I did have a maths tutor all the way up until my GCSEs. I had to do slightly different exams. So I did like an adult numeracy, literacy, multiple choice exam, because I wanted to get that, I think it's equivalent to a GCSE, because I didn't get it in the normal exams, the written exams. So there's slightly different pathways you can take, but I think just getting a diagnosis is so key for understanding and also getting the support you need.
Lovely. Seemed to be a lot of things that came together to develop confidence, really.
Yeah.
In terms of early diagnosis, lots of support from home, and your amazing talent in sport, of course. Someone's asking about comprehension of questions in exams, but I wonder if that's complicated slightly by having dyslexia as well. Did you ever consider having a reader in exams? Yeah,
so I got 25% extra time for anything literacy, and anything numerical was 50% extra time. I had a reader and a scribe up until, I think, secondary school, so up until about 14 maybe. I did, yeah, from there on I did just have a reader for the maths actually, but not for any English stuff. So yeah, I think you can, if you can access that support, then 100%. I think it's really helpful, particularly because my reading was a little bit more behind when I was at primary school, so that was really helpful at that stage.
Fantastic. Huge thank you, Adele. It has, even for me, myself, you know, who works with in this all the time, you know, to hear this personal perspective and all those tips and tricks for support is absolutely fantastic. So thank you very much for today and for your time. And yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.